Welcome to Inside Scoop Live, brought to you by Reader Views. Host Sherry Hoyt sits down with authors to dig into their stories, their writing lives, and the ideas that keep them up at night. Whether you're looking for your next great read or just love a good conversation around books, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Hi, everyone. Lisa Towles joins the show today to talk about her latest novel, The Weight of Cold Things. It's a psychological thriller about a Wyoming deputy whose boss vanishes and the search that pulls her all the way to the Alaskan ice. Before we get started, here's the inside scoop on the author. Lisa Towles is an award-winning Amazon best-selling crime novelist, podcast host, and book coach dedicated to helping authors stand out in a crowded marketplace. She is the author of 15 published crime novels. Her thrillers are known for their psychological depth, high stakes, and cinematic pacing. Lisa is also the force behind Story Impact, a platform spanning consulting, a podcast, and a magazine, all built to elevate authors through branding, market intelligence, and publishing guidance. It's also the home of her nonfiction book, The Me Factor, Your Secret Weapon for Author Visibility. It's a strategic framework that helps authors clarify their identity, understand their market, and build a brand that lasts. Lisa holds an MBA in IT management and brings a blend of creative expertise and business strategy to her work. You can learn more about Lisa and all of her work at lisatowles.com. Well, hi, Lisa. Welcome back to Inside Scoop Live.
Thank you, Sherry. I'm so excited to be here again.
Yeah, it's so nice to have you. We're here to talk about your latest book just released, The Weight of Cold Things. Tell us a little bit about it and what inspired the story.
So sometimes I have kind of like what you just described, like one thing, one idea, one person, some kind of like a visual catalyst that sort of lights the spark for a new book. And then other times I don't know where they come from, to be honest. I'm sure you talk to a lot of authors that say both of those things. This one, I'm not sure where the idea for the whole complete story came from, but I did hear of the town of Deadhorse in Alaska, and I was like, kind of picture me rubbing my hands together with like an evil grin on my face. I was like, Deadhorse, I mean, that's a real place. I have to write about that. So The Weight of Cold Things is another standalone thriller. I do have one 3-book series, but I write predominantly standalone thrillers. And this is a book that's also kind of different from a lot of my other titles because it's darker. My husband said it's the darkest of all my books. And it also doesn't take place in Boston or San Francisco or a big city. It takes place in rural Wyoming and Deadhorse, Alaska, which is basically middle of nowhere. It's north of the Arctic Circle.
I mean, that's scary right there, you know?
No kidding. A place that's only light like 6 months of the year, and it's completely flat. I mean, they do have these kind of haunting mountains off in the distance, the Brooks Range, which I think makes it even scarier. And I was so lucky with this book because I just happened to meet a man who worked in the Alaska oil fields in Deadhorse, Alaska in the 1970s and 80s when that part of my book takes place. I mean, what are the chances of that?
You had to write this book.
Exactly. And I was already kind of deep into like the first third, and I was doing, as much research as I can without actually flying there. And then I went to a Sisters in Crime reading, and I was the timekeeper for that event. And I was sitting next to the husband of another reader, and we were just kind of meeting each other. And I said, "What do you do?" And he said, "I'm a crime novelist, and I used to work in Deadhorse, Alaska." And I almost dropped my coffee. I mean, most people have never even heard of that. So he wrote a book about it. He's a wonderful writer, and he was just so generous with his time. He read a bunch of drafts. He corrected some things that my online research got wrong. And that was such a blessing to get it right for, I mean, there aren't going to be a lot of readers that know that area, but there will be some. So I was very lucky. I mean, as you know, Sherry, writing a book, it takes a village, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Like I'm just one person in a huge like chorus of people that participates to get it ready for readers.
I love hearing how, he shared his time with you and, got some things right that you wouldn't have known had you just relied on, the internet research. Because I think
Mhm,
it's harder and harder to depend on internet research. But that
mhm.
wasn't my point. The point was I love hearing about how authors help authors. It's like
Yeah.
you're not in competition with each other. You're all writing great stories. To me
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, and lifting each other up, and that's what you're doing. That's what Reader Views does. I mean, you guys don't just do editorial reviews. You have so many services that you offer to authors. And this podcast, letting potential readers hear my voice and the excitement in my voice talking about my books. That's why I do my podcast too, where people could kind of see and hear an author and see that kind of spark and magic in their eyes and when they talk about their characters. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, the book you mentioned opens is it open in Alaska?
It's yes. So there are two points of view. Most of it is first person point of view through a deputy sheriff in Wyoming, Gree Gooding. Her name's
Mm.
Gretchen Gooding, but she goes by Gree Gooding. But the prologue takes place in Alaska from the point of view of the antagonist. So
Hmm.
the Deadhorse parts of it, for like the first 2/3 of the book, are mostly first person Gree Gooding, and then interspersed in the chapters are occasional chapters by kind of the madman in Deadhorse. And that gives the reader a chance to understand him, understand kind of some of the backstory of why he does what he does. My friend Jonathan J. Brown, he's a wonderful crime thriller. He wrote an article for my magazine coming out in October about villains. And he was saying that when you kind of normalize the polarity of them and bring them closer together, it kind of, muddies the water in a really wonderful way. I mean, you see
Mm.
the protagonist as not quite so light and the antagonist is not quite so dark when you understand what his motivations were. What were the drivers that led him to kind of snap and become what he becomes? And I think that's really, really smart guidance, actually.
Yeah. I mean, because any of us could snap at a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
Because not
Mm-hmm.
all the bad guys are all bad, and the good
Mm-hmm.
guys aren't all good. We're just not like that. We're human. Yeah.
Yeah, and what I think about a lot is why we're so drawn to dark fiction. Like
Yeah.
what is it about? Like, Game of Thrones. It had like millions and millions and millions of watchers, and some of those characters and what they did were incredibly dark, and people were glued to it. And what was it about that? Like, why? I mean, I know fiction is an escape, but are there other things there? So, I mean, it's a curiosity for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So Gree, I love that nickname, by the way. I've never heard that before for Gretchen. I love that.
Thank you.
But her husband had drowned in an accident before the book even
Mm-hmm.
takes place.
Yep.
So he died under mysterious circumstances, and she kind of never accepted that, or he's missing. But she ends up having to go back to this place where her husband's missing.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that do for her? Because it hasn't
It
been that long since her husband died, has it?
That's right. He disappeared 6 months before the book starts. And her mother died like a year before the book starts. And she hasn't dealt with any of that. So she's running from a lot. I mean, Gree Gooding is, I think she has the makings of a perfect protagonist because she's incredibly smart and has a lot of depth, and she's a complete train wreck. I mean, she's not dealing with any of this. And I can relate to her, and I've heard readers say that they could relate to that aspect of her too. So yeah, her husband AJ was a petroleum geologist in the North Slope of Alaska studying the permafrost. And in that part of Deadhorse, it's where the Arctic Ocean, the Beaufort Sea, and the Sag River. So you have salt water, you have fresh water, and then you have frozen land, and then other parts that are like kind of thawing. And so that permafrost is what
Hmm.
he was studying. And he disappeared up there. And he later finds out that he drowned, but then that's kind of ambiguous too. And the topical crime at the beginning of the story, all my books are really like an onion. You have some kind of like topical crime in the beginning of the story, and then you keep peeling back the layers and you find out that there are other crimes related to that. And so there are really kind of two stories going on here. What happens with Gree and her family on her ranch in Wyoming and what's happening in Deadhorse. And they're two completely different things, but they're completely related too.
Mm.
So the topical crime in the beginning of the book is that when it starts, the sheriff of Teton County has been missing for 3 weeks. And that's Gree's boss and friend and mentor. And he just up and vanished. And they're conducting an exhaustive search of him everywhere. And then all of a sudden, one morning, the sheriff's office gets a call from an Alaska state trooper, Matt DeGare. He ends up being a really important character. And someone from his office says, "We found a wallet from someone named Sheriff Peter Barrett from Wyoming, and we think this is his office. Is this, do I have the right place?" And so, come to find out, Peter's wallet was found in Deadhorse, Alaska.
Hmm.
So Gree is being pressured to go up there to see if it's his. And she doesn't want to go to Deadhorse. Oh my God. I mean, that's literally the last place she would ever want to go. That's like her kind of quickening, sort of. So she
Right.
said, put it in a FedEx envelope and mail it to me. I don't have to go 4,000 miles north. And she finds out from the sheriff's office, well, no, we actually found a body near the wallet. It hasn't been identified yet, but you need to go up here to look at the wallet and identify a body. So that's really bad news for her because now she can't hide anymore. I mean, she's the
Right.
deputy sheriff. She has to be the one to go up there. The sheriff doesn't have any next of kin who can do it. She has to do it. So, yeah, that's the first of some unbelievable challenges. Oh my God, what I put this character through in this book. I feel kind of bad about it. This book is dark, and this book took a lot from me.
Yeah.
I think it gave me a lot, but there are some parts of it writing about the antagonist that made me kind of scared, sitting up in the dark at 2 a.m. by myself writing it. And sometimes that happens. And, it's up to me to kind of step away and evaluate, do I really want to put this on the page? And I did put it on the page. And the readers who have said that it's my darkest thriller, yet they haven't complained saying, oh, this was too dark, I can't do it. I think the resounding sentiment is that it does really go there. I mean, there's no on-page graphic horror or anything like that. None of my books do that, but it does get very dark in terms of crime, and it gets very psychologically dark too, but there's a really big payoff too. I mean, like what Gree Gooding is in the beginning of the book compared to who she is at the end. She's like a completely different person having gone through all of these things.
And that's usually what it takes, doesn't it?
Yep.
So I'm stuck on this really dark thing because I think, you know what? Can you go too dark? I don't know. I guess for some people you can, but how do you feel about writing such a darker character than you're used to?
I think the antagonist in The Weight of Cold Things is in some ways the embodiment of everyone who wronged me. And I think that's what we do as fiction writers. I've said time and again that I don't really believe there's such a thing as fiction. We're not making stuff up. We're pulling from our own experience, from our own untouched pain, and we synthesize it and translate it in a way that makes it into someone else's pain, someone else's story, someone else's tragedy, and someone else's catalyst for transformation. And maybe we transform in the process. I don't know.
Wow.
I think creativity is very mysterious.
Mm-hmm.
Like my mom is reading The Weight of Cold Things right now. She doesn't really read dark thrillers. She doesn't even read fiction all that much. But I'm lucky that she does read my books, and she's like, how did you come up with this idea? And how did you come up with that idea? And I'm like, Mom, I really don't know. I don't know. I mean, like they show up. I think once we create a character that's memorable to us and we really flesh them out well, so we know who they are, what they care about, what they're afraid of, what motivates them. Once we have that like well outlined, the characters kind of decide, and I'm just like, okay, so we're doing this now. All right, let me put my fingers on the keyboard and see where it takes us. That's why you need a really good editor. I mean, you need a lot of editors to let you know if you're on the right track. This book had, I think, 42 rounds of editing, and I bet you $100 someone's going to find a typo somewhere. You can't find them all.
Of course. Yeah, there's one that sneaks by, isn't there? Wow, 42 drafts. Oof.
Well, 42 times that it was like gone through. I have my professional editors that I work with. I have a sensitivity reader. I have beta readers. I have an alpha reader. My sister reads all my books, and she reads only thrillers. So she's a great person
Oh, good.
to read my books. My husband, I go through it probably 8 or 10 times, like a bunch before I send it to my editor because I don't want it to be a complete mess.
Right.
And then at the end, after I've incorporated everyone's feedback, which can be really difficult because sometimes there's a beta reader that says, I really loved this in the story. And another one says, I didn't really like that same thing. So I have to decide how to reconcile that and kind of what the truth is for that character. So I read it a bunch of times at the end. I read it aloud at the end twice.
Mm-hmm.
And I do miss things. And I'm always shocked to see all these people read this and no one saw that the word the is right next to each other, two of them.
Right.
So, yeah.
I think our eyes play tricks on us, though, too, especially if you're familiar with the work. You've looked at it 8 times already, and you just kind of, even reading it out loud, that is the way to catch most of the mistakes, but, you're so close to it. But yeah.
Yep.
Now, you mentioned there's another story going on in Wyoming, and Gree has a ranch in Wyoming, and there are kind of 2 men there that kind of have her back, I guess you would say. One is her father, who's a retired sheriff, and then Cholo, the ranch hand. What's going on that side of the world? What's going on in Wyoming? And who are these people to Gree?
They're her family, really. I mean, the only family that she has left. So she was born and raised in Cody, Wyoming, and she's the deputy sheriff and eventually the sheriff in Jackson, Wyoming. That's like a 4 or 5 hour drive through the mountains. And she commutes on weekends and she goes back to Cody most weekends. And she has a really kind of tangled relationship with her dad. And the book starts and it's the anniversary of her mother's death, the 1-year anniversary of her mother's death. So there's that tension. But there's also the tension where they hear about how Peter's wallet was found and they're trying to talk her into going to Deadhorse, Alaska to identify the body, and she's fighting it bad. I mean, she does not want to do that. And then there's a character. So Cholo has been on the ranch with them for like 30 years, and he's as much a family member as her own dad. And then there's a character, Woody Quinn, who used to be a ranch hand years ago and former lover of Gree, and he got in with the wrong crowd and they had a really bad falling out. And so he shows up at the beginning as kind of her escort to Deadhorse. And she's thinking, I didn't think it could get any worse, but now I'm going with Wood. Just kill me.
Yeah. How did that happen? How did he come back into the picture? I guess you don't want to give that away.
He had wanted to get back in with the family, and he went to jail for a while, and he just kind of saw the opportunity, and he knows her. He knows what she's running from. He knew her husband, AJ, before he died. And yeah, it's the perfect combination of suffering for Gree. And that's what I wanted to do with her, because I think that's when we learn what a character's really made of. Like when they're pushed against the wall and there's like nowhere to run, you find out who someone really is. And she has some extraordinary strength in this book, some extraordinary fortitude that she pulls out that I don't think she really knew that she had.
Boy, she does have a lot to deal with. 2 deaths she's not dealing with, a boss who's missing, an old boyfriend who's suddenly back in her life. And she's not really one to deal with things, it sounds like. How does she not deal with things until she has to? Does she just kind of shut down, or what does that look like for her?
She's a rancher.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're a rancher, Sherry. I know you live in Texas, but I lived in New Mexico for many years, and I knew a lot of ranchers when I lived in New Mexico. And the ranchers that I knew didn't waste a lot of time on things that don't matter. And so she's that kind of strong, silent type, and she internalizes a lot. And I don't think she really sees the logic in grieving. I think she knows the kind of the medical and emotional necessity of it, but I don't think she sees it as efficient and necessary. And so she just kind of keeps moving forward and sort of leaves it behind. And she's been doing that all her life. And boy, does it catch up with her.
That's true. I guess I don't know how to do that. I'm always, okay, what's the worst possible scenario? And that's where I go. And then I spend time worrying about that, and so I wish I could like slough off some of the stuff, but
Well, I think that can be helpful. I think that's maybe your way of minimizing it is saying, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? Okay, well, that's not that bad. So maybe this isn't that bad. I think that's really smart, actually. And I don't think Gree does even that. I don't think she does any of it. She's just going to keep moving forward in her life, solving crimes in Jackson, Wyoming. And what happens when they get to Deadhorse, when they finally get there? She arrives in Fairbanks and then they go to Deadhorse together. She finds out that there's a lot of stuff that's been going on in Deadhorse and AJ might be a part of it. So she learns a lot about why he disappeared, what he was doing, and what's going on there. And there's some espionage in the plot. There's some kind of covert government operatives and projects going on. And Deadhorse, Alaska has a lot of secrets. And Gree Gooding decides that AJ was trying to uncover that, and now she's going to do the same thing.
Okay. So now at one point, there's an old timer there in Deadhorse that calls Deadhorse a black hole or a place where people go to disappear. And I think Gree would agree with that. Gunther. And then she's finding out all these things. It's like, are people keeping things from her? Is she finding out things that, she's just totally blown away by? How do you make sense of all of that when there's so many missing parts?
I think in the first half of the book, it's good that there are missing parts. Like when I think of myself reading a book like this as a reader, in the first half of the book, I want to have a lot of questions. I want the book to challenge me so that I think, well, what is that about? And how does that relate to that? And I think those questions are good because if I'm doing the right job with the depth of the characters, they care about the character enough to want to find out what that's about. But what they encounter in Deadhorse is kind of a conspiracy of silence, and Gunther shows up and seems to want to help them by giving them information. So of course they're sort of dubious and they're like, well, how do we know that anything that he's telling us is believable? And I'm not going to spoil it, so the reader will have to figure out whether he's trustworthy or not. But yeah, I mean, this book is really about Gree trying to reclaim her life after significant loss, but trying to understand what her life really is. And maybe it wasn't what she thought.
Now, with all this dark and secrets and, doom and gloom, there's one person that kind of lights everything up, Marilyn, the dispatcher at the trooper station. She's a bit of fun. What did she let you do in the story that, you couldn't obviously do with the darker characters?
She doesn't know about what some of the darkness is at first. And she was like a little bit lighter of a character to kind of like, sort of give readers a break, from the emotional, from the psychological depth of Gree and of her backstory and of what was going on. And those other characters are kind of fun because they sort of punctuate what's going on with the main characters. I think the trick is finding the right number of characters so there aren't so many, and so that the reader is mostly reading about like 2 or 3 main themes in the book. So there's a lot going on in this story, and Gree Gooding is at the heart of it. And wow, there are some real secrets in this story. But there's also a couple of moments that were really beautiful. There's one moment on the Cody Ranch that made me cry writing it, and people have said that it made them cry reading it. So I think there's a big emotional payoff to everything that happens in this book, and we'll see if readers feel the same way.
Wow. So when readers do finish your book, what do you hope that they get out of it, that they're left thinking about? Or do you write strictly for entertainment? Or is there a little bit of that human connection, I can relate to that kind of thing too, involved?
I think all of that. I hope that someone who finishes the book will feel like they were moved by the story, that there are some aspects of it that are going to stay with them. I read a lot. I read a lot of books. I read several books at one time, and it's hard for them to kind of stick with me. And the ones that really do have something that really sort of triggers something and moves something in me. As authors, we need to do more than just be visible to readers. We want them to remember us and come back for more. So, if I did a good job with this book, I hope people will want to read my next book that comes out next year. It's called Midnight Pass, and it's going to be much lighter than The Weight of Cold Things.
The Weight of Cold Things, it just had to be heavy though, So how many books in are you now? 15, 16?
I've had 16 books published, and The Weight of Cold Things is the 15th thriller. So in April of this year, I released a nonfiction book called The Me Factor, Your Secret Weapon for Author Visibility. And
Mm.
in addition to being a writer, I'm also a book coach. So I'm a consultant and I help authors with branding, marketing, audience outreach, and kind of understanding who they are and how they fit into the marketplace. And so that book is about a lot of the book coaching work that I do. And it's really intended to sort of demystify marketing and to kind of comfort and encourage authors.
Yeah.
It's called the Me Factor because I want to encourage authors to bring their uniqueness to the page and to everything they do as an author.
Wow, I love that. Yeah. Did you ever imagine all those years ago, whenever you started your first book, that you would be at the point you're at now? Like, you do a lot.
Yeah, I take on a lot. Sometimes I take on too much and I don't always have good boundaries and I feel overwhelmed and then I pull back. It's definitely not like an even path all the time, but I think that's something that all authors confront. Every author that I work with,
Mhm.
my clients, my good friends, they all say the same thing, kind of struggling with what is my capacity? Like
Mm.
what are my limits? Saying no is really important, but it's really hard.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have to kind of appreciate how there's still only 100% of me every day. I can chop that up into like 1% chunks if I want. That'll leave me feeling very scattered. Or I can be a little bit more mindful and say, okay, I'm going to spend the next hour doing this and I'm going to really focus on it and immerse myself in it. So
Yeah.
I try. I struggle with it, but I try. But yeah, I have some extraordinary author clients that I work with that just enrich my life. And honestly, I had no one helping me at all in the beginning of my writing path. And that's my
Mm.
purpose now. I want to help other authors have an easier entry into writing and publishing than I did. And I want to help them have a better experience and enjoy it more.
Yeah. I love that. And that feeds you too. That teaches you. I mean, just talking and sharing ideas with other people. It's just that camaraderie that comes
Hmm.
to what we think of as such a solitary profession. Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it is solitary, like you say. I mean, like we're the ones that have to write the books. We have to get that word count in, but it really does take a village. There are so
Mhm.
many people that kind of help us.
Right. So, The Weight of Cold Things is out now. For anyone who wants to grab a copy or any of your other books, where should they go?
They're all available on Amazon, but they're available everywhere books are sold too. Some of them are available in audiobook. I think all of them are available on Kindle and paperback. Some of them are also available in hardcover. And you can go to lisatolles.com and you can send me an email if you have a question or if you just want to give me some feedback on my books. I really liked this about this book, or why did you do this in this book? I want to
Yeah.
hear all that feedback. I appreciate all of it.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, you don't have to write a book about the book, just one or two lines, even what you liked, what you didn't, just any
Oh,
feedback.
absolutely. And if people could leave reviews of my books, if they read it and they like something about it, that's literally the best gift that a reader can give an author because it lasts forever.
Right. Well, Lisa, did you have anything else you wanted to add today?
I just want to thank you, Sherry. I want to thank you for making time for me on Inside Scoop. And I really appreciate this podcast. And I listen to a lot of your conversations. And I appreciate the role that you and Reader Views play in the literary marketplace, lifting authors up and educating them and giving them opportunities to have their voice heard. So we couldn't do it without you. And I just want to say thank you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It helps that we love what we do, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Lisa, again for joining me. I really enjoyed catching up as always, and we'll talk again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, Sherry. Take care. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for joining us today on Inside Scoop Live. Check out this and all of our author interviews at InsideScoopLive.com.